Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Leadership Toolkit. My name is Mike Phillips, and I will be your host. And as you know, for those of you that are tuning in and watching this show regularly, we go live every Wednesday at 12:05 Mountain Time, 2:05 Eastern Time. I try and bring on really great guests so that you can learn from their successes, their failures, and all kinds of different facets of business. And so we have these collaborative conversations, and we just kind of kick the ball back and forth and talk about what leadership is, what leadership isn't, and how we can help you grow. So with that, today I've got a really fantastic guest. He's a good friend of mine. He runs the channel Leadership with Mike, which is a phenomenal name, if I may say so. I have my good friend Mike Ashie. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you. I'm just glad I got the name before you did.
That's so the funny thing is, that's how, as you know, I've shared this with you. That's how we met, is
Yeah.
because I was trying to claim the name and I'm like, who is this guy? And you actually put out really amazing content for, management and leadership and all of the things surrounding that. And so I would like to say, in the last probably 5 years, you've become definitely a mentor to me and certainly a good friend. So
I appreciate that. And I take a lot of comfort having you in my corner as well. As between me and you, we've had a lot of great conversations and a
we
lot
have.
of knowledge sharing.
So if you would just take a minute or two, again, welcome to the show. If someone is hiding under a rock and does not know who you are, or isn't familiar with your channel, if you would take a minute or two, just share a little bit of where you're at right now, what your experience is, and both in business, life, leadership, and I'll pass you the ball, Mike.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. So I run, as Mike said, I run the YouTube channel Leadership with Mike. I've been doing that for almost 5 years. We are sitting at 36,000 subscribers, which means to me, there's 36,000 people dedicated to trying to elevate their leadership, their management style. And it's been a great, interesting journey. And the more videos that I'm able to produce, the more that I'm able to learn, the more that I hopefully am able to help just somebody watching. If I had to say a style, it's very direct, upfront. I'd like to think a touch of humor, but
A lot of humor.
I like to keep things very simple. I find the more words you use, the more opportunity to have confusion. So that's the gist of it. Recently, if I may add this, Mike, I've become the director of product growth for a company, One Click, which is helping everybody on their socials. So you create a video and we use AI to help you ramp up your reach on all other platforms. And the cool thing is that came from me stepping out of my comfort zone and starting a YouTube channel on leadership, when in the past I've been told I wasn't quite ready for leadership.
Right. No, and that we got, gosh, maybe 90 days ago, you mentioned that to me and you shared that with me and you said, hey, I'm doing this AI video stuff. And certainly outside the norm, really phenomenal product. I think is a good opportunity to help grow your channel and certainly your influence and such. So very, very cool. So a few things as we get into talking about this. What's a little bit of your background? How did you get into, like, what had you deciding to start a YouTube channel? How did you say, hey, I'm going to do this?
So, I mean, if we go way back when, I had a high school teacher giving me crap because I was joining a bunch of idiots doing high school style stuff for young men. Pulled me aside and said, what are you doing? You're the leader of the group, which I never, at the time, I didn't understand. I felt like I was kind of going with the flow, but it really sparked something. What are you talking about, me, the leader of the group? And as I worked through my career and I went to school for hospitality management, started management in restaurants and bars. And then I started working at the international airport, and I put off taking on extra roles in the company. But at one point I decided, you know what, there's management positions opening. I believe that I have the chops to handle uh, this role. And I applied and I failed. I didn't get hired. And I applied again. And it literally happened 7 times that I was denied for this role. At which point I said, you know what? I don't need somebody sitting in HR telling me that I do or do not have the chops. I
Sure.
know what leadership is. I am the one who's actually getting the employees to do something, or I'm getting them to not do something because management needs to make some adjustments in the process or whatever. So I already had I had the proof for myself. So I said, screw it. I'm starting this leadership channel and I'm going to prove to myself that I'm right about what's going on. Fast forward a little bit. I did get hired for that role. COVID came, wiped out air travel. And I've been doing leadership guidance since then. And
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. And anybody else who questions themselves because of somebody else's opinion of them, if you can just push past that, the opportunities truly are, in my experience, are endless. Again, friendships have come, business has grown, opportunities have come, all from not being scared to step into my own, what I knew about myself, which
Sure.
comes with leadership. This all came from crapping my pants and putting that first leadership video up.
Hey, I know exactly how it is. I know exactly how it
Right?
is, man. And one of the things you mentioned that I think is really important, it's not always about it's actually almost never about the title, is it? I mean, it's
Never,
always
never.
the reality is like Mike's saying here, hey, I had the leadership chops. I was already having people do the stuff. I was already acting on this. I was already doing these things. And because of that, and you were executing on it, I think it's so valuable for people to realize wherever you're at, you're wherever you are, you that's watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, you are a leader of someone or something, like yourself included.
Hmm.
But one of the things you pointed out was it took some resilience. You had to apply over and over again to get the title.
Yes. And the thing is that it's very easy to fall into the trap of believing what other people are saying or showing you. So again, I had to get kicked in the face a few times, and then I'm like, but they don't know what I know about me. And
Sure.
Mike, you said it best, but in my opinion, management, that's a title that I can give you. I can say you're a manager, and that
Sure.
is what it becomes. Leadership is something that you give yourself. Like, yes, that high school teacher said, you're the leader of the group. He was talking to me, but I had to decide if I'm a leader or not. And like you said, whether you're a leader in your family, at work, at church, on your basketball team, whatever it might be, however you present yourself to the world, you have that opportunity to take the lead in how you act and react and not limit yourself. And that's a huge difference between leadership and management. I don't know if we were going there, but that's kind of where I touched on.
Well, hey, no, I think you're spot on, because I think with leadership, it takes management, like you said, somebody may bestow that title. They ordain you as a manager,
Right?
right?
They knight
But
you.
but in leadership, it's one, you have to accept responsibility, and two, it's other people that give you that role,
Right.
because other people have to be willing to get in line and follow you. Like when you're saying, hey, back in high school I was the leader of the group. Well, how were you the leader of the group? It wasn't like they were like, well, we're gonna knight you.
Right.
Oh, right. And now
Right.
you are the high school leader from the and I think that's something that's very important for managers to realize while Mike
Yes.
and I are talking about this, is you may be a manager, but oftentimes you have somebody that's actually leading from the middle of an organization. They're the actual leader. So one of those things, you need to be able to work in tandem with whoever that person is. And I don't know if we're going there, but we
Yeah,
probably, I
yeah.
mean, we
No,
could.
absolutely. And that's the thing. And just to kind of circle back here, there's a there f- seems to be a lot of victims in this world. And I very much could have been a victim of my circumstance with the woe is me. I'm not getting the promotion I feel I deserve.
Sure.
In my opinion, and this is something that I see leaders doing, it's taking action and not being a victim. You can have crappy circumstances, but the more ownership you take, or the more control you take away from others and you bestow upon yourself, the better the opportunities turn out to be the next day. I think, again, so many people, it's the woe is me. I don't think leaders sit on that for too long.
No.
Like, don't get me wrong, I was ticked for there, but I'm very much, I need a nap. And when I wake up from my nap, I'm fine.
Well, we talked about that. Gosh, maybe a couple weeks ago, might have been last week. I was talking with a guest on the show, and that was one of the things we discussed. Is it's like, okay, yeah, if you lose or you fail, and this is something I took from one of my son's high school football coaches, American football, right? Is that like if you lose, if you take an L in life, in a sport, in whatever it may be, if you fail at something, it is important to reflect on it, but there has to be a line in the sand. And that was one of the things my son's high school football coaches always said was, okay, look, reflect on it for no more than 24 hours. At the end of 24 hours, move on. You got other stuff to do. You have
Yes.
more important things. And I think you're right on too. One other thing you said, leaders take action.
Yeah.
And I think that's very valuable. Oftentimes, and it is important to assess and strategize and determine, like, okay, what action are we going to take? But at some point, leaders have to move, right? You've got to move, you've got to go. And y- I years and years ago, probably 10 years ago now, I wrote a blog article titled "Running Your Life on Double A's," right? Actions and attitude. Those
Nice.
were the two things that for me drive leadership. And so I think it's neat that you're saying that, like, hey, you got to take action. So
Yeah, there's no question. And in my experience, the managers that I've worked with, the
mhm,
ones the ones that can't make a decision, the ones that spend so much time, flirting with either side of the fence, they're the ones that don't get the respect. They're the ones that don't get the promotions. They're the ones that everybody will second guess because they constantly second guess themselves. I prefer make a decision, work it, and if you need to, then you pivot. But you're pivoting with thought, and that's your next decision. It's not made out of fear, it's made out of results. It's made from data, from feedback, and being able to say, okay, that was wrong, or that didn't work out the way I thought. We're
sure.
going to pivot. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. But when your team can't trust you because you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe you should, maybe we should. Like, it's so difficult to be an employee under those circumstances.
Well, nobody wants a wishy-washy leader. Nobody wants a wishy-washy spouse. Nobody wants
Yep.
a wishy-washy parent. That's one of those hard things that and we look at it like, oh, even our kids. I have young kids. I know you do. That it's like,
Yep.
if you're wishy-washy on something, even your and kids are awesome because they don't
They're
have a
going
lot of
right in on
filters,
it.
right? They'll go right in. Like,
Yeah.
Dad, just make a decision.
Yeah.
And it's so important to do that in business and in life. I'm going to backtrack on, because I keyed in on something that you said, hey, you've got to make a decision, you've got to make action. Do you have because you touched on a few things, you highlighted a few things, but I'm going to try and pull it in here just a little bit. Do you have a process or a few steps that you take in order? Okay, so this is where we want to go. This is the decision I think I should make. What are a few steps that somebody should take in that role to help them make a definitive decision so that they're not being wishy-washy?
So I think the one thing that I try to do, and I think I'm pretty good at, is gathering information as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't have to be a race at the end of unless it has to be a race. But if you're the boss, you can say, "Okay, I need to think on this." if you're in a heated situation at the airport, we had lots where it was, thousands of bags are not getting to their plane. We looked after the baggage system. Thousands of bags are not getting to their plane. We need to make a decision now. At that
Okay.
point, I had to talk to a certain couple key people and make a decision based off that. But in my own life, I've learned I don't know how to quantify it. It's a gut feeling. I make big decisions quick. My wife and I bought 2 rental properties on the same day based off of a gut decision and a little bit of information knowing about where the price they were asking, the real estate market, the rental market, the clause that I could have to get out of that situation if I needed to sell, all of these things. And that's how I make big decisions. My wife and I can spend a month trying to figure out which carpet to buy. But for the big decisions, it's really a gut feeling and taking in as much information that I need to help sort and making the decision. And most of us, majority of the time, are not making decisions where somebody could die. Granted, there's jobs where that
Sure.
happens, but a lot of us are not making those decisions. So start having the opportunity to screw up. Try to make them small screw ups. Learn from them. Why did we screw up here? What was the problem? What did I do? I don't want you as a leader to think, well, my team did this, and if this guy would have said that. No, what did you do to cause you to make the wrong decision? And from that, you learn from it. It's all about experience. And Mike Tyson says it, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Get
You're
punched in the
right.
face. And then we got to make a new plan to not do that again. We've learned. That's called experience. So
Sure.
many new managers want to come in and think that they can't make a single mistake. Yes, there could be pressure. I get that. But mistakes are part of learning. If you're in a good leadership team, they understand. They will force you in positions where you have to make what you believe are critical decisions, but they're kind of there to guide, right?
Sure. Well, and so one of the things I'm hearing you say is like, okay, if you're making a gut decision, part of the reason you're feeling that way is because of one, past experience that you've taken the time to learn from and assess, two, current information. And so and then three, and for anybody watching or listening to this, whether it's you're live now or if you're watching after the fact, here's one of the things to realize, or this is what I'm hearing you say, Mike. Like it's not irresponsible. I'm not just knee jerk pulling the trigger, but because of those things, right? I have the information and I have the experience. Then most of the time, I think when people do feel that in their gut, the first decision is the right decision.
Yep.
Most of the time.
Yep. I
Um,
really like how you break down what I said because that's what I was going for, but it didn't come out as
no,
precise as what you did.
that's part of what we do, man. I try and break it out and give actionable items because I think that's something that's really valuable. And I do think too that that's one of the ways people become wishy-washy. Like we were saying a
Yeah.
minute ago, is like
Yeah.
it's too much assessment, right? You can strategize yourself into inaction,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I know you have talked a lot about, one of the things that you um, email, because I email one or two lines, and I'm going to kind of shift gears here for a second because I think this ties in. Something you said earlier was, okay, well, I was already being the leader, I was already doing the thing, and it took you a bunch of tries to get somebody else to acknowledge that, but you first acknowledged it. And one of the things that you brought up was people, and I'm going to tie these together, people acting their wage right now, or people
Yes.
acting their position.
Yes.
So from your experience in the leadership arena, it sounds like that's a good thing. What about the way that it's being presented right now? Okay, acting like you want to presume the role that you already are, or specifically, this is more of a management thing, but I know you teach quite a bit on management. People acting their wage, right? We've all heard
Mhm.
that said,
Yep.
especially right now. Like that's a big
Yep.
deal. You got to act your wage. Well,
Yep.
first off, what does that mean?
So the way that I'm seeing this now is, and listen, There are bad companies out there. There are bad managers. There are people that want to take advantage of the workforce. I get
Sure.
that. And so what's being said now is, listen, this is the hours I'm on the clock. This is the job I was hired for. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing no more, no less, and I'm just going to act my wage. Everything, it's the saying, that's above my pay grade. I think I understand where that comes from. I just wish people would think a little bit harder on that reply, myself included, because when I was a young buck, before I wanted to get into management at the airport, I kind of had that, that's not my pay grade. And there is very high likelihood that that's what caused me to not get those positions.
Interesting.
And it's looking back at, I had an attitude, I had a mouth. I'm not saying I was a bad guy, but I had choice words sometimes.
You were
But
less polished than
I
you are
was
now.
less polished, if you can imagine it, it was possible. But the idea of, you know what? Don't go above and beyond for the company. Don't necessarily go above and beyond for your boss. Go above and beyond for your own resume, for your own experience, for yourself, knowing that you went in and you did what you had to do. Because what we don't know, and I've only started to see this as I became older, is the opportunities that are on the other side of acting a little bit above that wage, of going a little bit above and beyond. And I'm not telling you to pull 24-hour shifts all the time, not get paid, but don't be afraid to extend yourself to that next level. Let those in charge of hiring see that you're willing to do the job, that you're able to do the job, because again, we don't know the opportunities that are around the corner. Another time that this happened was simply me getting this role as director of product growth.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking with this team 2 years ago when they were kind of going a different way. They weren't paying me. They were just asking me as a creator what I'm missing or how they would be able to help me. I could have said, listen, guys, you're not paying me for this 1 hour. So, either you top up my coaching rate or we have to part ways. I absolutely could have said that, but something meshed with us. And I thought, you know what? This is a good group of people. I have stuff that I can share that can help them.
Sure.
Somewhere along the line, this will come back, not necessarily from them, but from somebody. Somebody's going to help me. Somebody's going to give me the time. Again, we don't know the opportunities that are around the corner. Fast track 2 years, there's a position available, a position that I am very qualified to fill. And it's not an application. It's not talking to strangers. It's the team saying, Mike, we're hoping that you're willing to join our team. If I was to sit back and say, I'm going to act my wage, you're not paying me for this, I wouldn't say that answer is 100% wrong, but I would have missed out on a great opportunity. And I think that's the huge takeaway. Acting your wage removes opportunities, in my opinion.
Interesting. See, I would have taken it a different way.
How are you taking it?
Well, when you sent that to me, because I've always, and so I think it is something like this is about perspective.
Yep.
Because if you say act your wage and people are acting where they are at in the present, they're more likely to stay in the present. And for me, I mean, having come from a long sales background, I remember early on, this is probably 20 years ago now, a manager looking at me and he said, "Hey, you got to dress for the part that you want. You got to dress for the role
Yes, I
that
get.
you
Yep.
want." Okay.
Yep.
And so when you're saying act your wage, like that's where my brain goes is, okay, well, so I've got to dress for the role I want. If I want to, I've got to act for the wage that I want. So there are two ways to look at it, because if you're acting that
Yep.
wage, right? You're acting
Yep.
out of kindness, you're acting out of experience, like you said, you're acting out of expertise and mastery for something like, hey, I'm qualified for this position. Then inevitably, guess what happens? You end up in that position. likewise on the other way, and like what you just touched on, if you're acting where you're at currently, you're a
Yeah.
lot more likely to stay where you're at currently.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that is like, let's just bring your attention to it, because I see it just like you all the time right now on TikTok.
Oh,
Especially
yeah.
TikTok is just
Yep.
rampant for it, for
Yep.
the, oh no, that's not my job, I'm
Yep.
not being paid for that. Okay, well, I mean, that's the case, but then when the opportunities arise, it is worth something. And if anybody, for anybody that's watching this, you got to ask yourself, are you content where you're at?
Mhm.
If you are, then act your wage,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If there's something more for you, then act your wage that you
Yep.
want to be,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Act your way
100%.
into it. So let me ask you a question. So moving into this director role of product growth, obviously, and having been in a role, like you were saying, at the international airport and so forth, and bringing people in, and I've asked this question a couple times on the show, and I've really enjoyed the answers. What are some qualities, if you're in a leadership role, what are some qualities you look for in people that you're wanting to bring on board to work alongside you?
Very my number one is I want somebody who's polite, but not afraid to say, "This won't work because." I don't like people that are negative and it's like, "Ah, well," 'cause and that's what we had at the airport. So the airport, it's a unionized position.
Hmm.
There was such a mesh of different, which was good, but different perspectives and different attitudes, but there was a lot of negative people that got through the hiring process. And it was a unionized environment. I'm not sure if you've worked on one. I don't like them because
I
I am
haven't. I'm
not
not a fan
equal to
from an
I'm
outside
not
perspective.
equal to everybody. I hold myself to a different standard. Some
Sure.
places, in some places, not so much. But when it comes to work, I don't want to be paid the same as you because that's what the job brings. I want to be paid what I'm worth and for the value that I bring. So at the airport, there was a lot of unionized employees saying, I don't want to do that simply because they don't want to change. I want to work with people that are saying, if they don't want to do something, because this is what I see is happening. Now we have a discussion. I want people
Mhm.
that are out, out of the box thinkers. I feel like that's an overstated, like that's used so many times, but there's huge value in that statement. It's just continue thinking of how can we do this? What's going to be different? And that's what I love about my new position now is because they're a young team and everybody's open. Not to say yes, that's the great idea, but they're open to hear it. And then sometimes as you get talking, you start molding a concept out of what was a throwaway idea, but something comes through. So I'm looking for people that have an opinion and are not afraid to say it
Okay.
politely, right?
They're willing to think for themselves.
They're willing to think for themselves. They are agreeable in the sense of they're not just fighting for the sake of being heard as the opposition.
Sure.
And they're just eager. They want to do the job. And I get there's a lot of jobs there I don't want to do. I've done them in the past because I needed an income. But at the same time, it kind of goes back to the act your wage. Bring some enthusiasm, bring some interest, get to know your coworkers. It's not a family, but you're part of a community. You're stuck working together. So bring some light to that environment, whether it be humor or just sharing stories, whatever it is, just be part of the team. And I think when that happens, the the individual's, let's say, IQ number is, to me, it's less important, how smart they are in some department or some aspect of life. It's how they can adapt. Because I've worked with really smart people that are just life stupid, and I have a hard time with that. Because
Life's stupid.
yeah,
That's going in the
I
comments.
don't even want to get into that. We can't get into that one. But there's
Good.
just an opportunity that great when you work with good people, great things will happen. That's how I look for it. Hashtag life stupid.
Hashtag life stupid, man.
It's a thing,
Somebody, I promise you, everybody that's watching knows someone that's in that hashtag right
right?
now.
Don't name names.
So one of the things that you said here too is, okay, sometimes just negative people got through the process.
Yep.
How do you think that happened?
In my opinion, that happened because HR is out of touch. It was an HR department doing the hiring, not the managers. And in my opinion, they should have had the managers as part of the interviewing process, because if if I'm at the time, I can't lead this guy. There's no motivation. I've had more motivation come out of rocks than this person, and I'm thinking of one employee in particular.
But we won't name names.
I will not name names. But this is what happens. So as you get in bigger companies, I think, and it was a labor intensive job. So it's more 2 feet in a heartbeat, they're in the door. And that's where it's difficult, especially for the managers that I talk to on my channel. They're new managers. It's usually labor or, front office type of jobs. And they can't make the call as to who's getting in.
So what you're saying, they're on the front line doing the thing.
Yeah.
And it's the back office making the decision on who's to bring on board.
Yes.
And so if that happens, how can you manage, and because you've been in that situation, how can you manage somebody that is negative? Can you manage somebody that's negative? How can you, what are some things you could do to help steer them in the right direction?
A lot of it, in my experience, is communication. You have to be willing to, I don't want to say split the difference, but you have to be willing to go onto their side, so to speak, and get to know them. Sure. Some people are negative. In my experience, they were negative because they were never heard by the company. Me going and asking them, why, pardon my French, but why are you shitting on everything? They've never had somebody ask them why they're doing that. And then you start to get a little bit of background. That's all you need. Because when you sit and you listen to their story just a little bit, you build that level of respect. I've never had somebody come here and talk to me like that. There's just a sliver of respect, and that can grow immensely in a very short period of time. And now I got this negative person coming to me with the negative idea, but now telling me why it's not going to work. Now we have value. Now I can, as the leadership team, we can do something with, don't do this because. Now, we've got a discussion that can happen. We can really understand. And I feel that sometimes you have frontline workers, they're the ones doing the work. They know what works. And then you have the office people saying, oh, we're going to make this change. Because why? Or we need you to count it 10 times, but then I want this person to count it 20 times. Why? Like, what's the thought process here? Because that person also has to do this, that, and the other thing. So sometimes we just have red tape for the sake of using the red tape, in my opinion.
Well, if I may, one thing that I think can make us so successful as leaders is just answer that question for people. Why?
Right?
Just answer that question for people.
Can I tell you how many managers are said, you don't need to know why. This is the way we're doing things.
They get all Mandalorian on them. This is the way.
This is the way. Exactly.
but here's the interesting thing, going back a minute too, when you said, like, communication is huge. And if you have somebody that's negative, and the first thing you do is you go to them and you talk to them and you say, hey, why are you acting this way? And if they look at you and go, well, because nobody listens to me, and you can look back at them and honestly and genuinely say, well, I'm here to listen to you.
I'm listening.
Yep. Then they're like, oh, well, I guess that takes away that objection.
Yeah. And you know what? There's a majority of people, in my experience and my understanding, that really don't want to deal with conflict.
Sure.
I had the best interactions with people who, at the airport, you would call, they were loudmouths. They could be very direct. They could be very rude. But when I took the position of in a designated leadership role,
mm-hmm.
I would say, why are you doing that? Why are we having this discussion? Why am I here? Not in a, you're an idiot, why am I here? But in a very direct, what's the issue? And a lot of times one conversation fix the issue, or at least made them feel heard, whether I could do anything or not. And I would never advise anybody to promise something that you can't control, but you can promise to look into it. You can promise to keep that on the forefront of your mind for next time or whatever it might be. But just being heard, it's such a valuable thing for people
So
just to be
valuable.
heard.
I think you're right on. I'm going to ask you one right now, just so I don't get to the end and not ask you, because I enjoy our conversations on stuff like this. Uh, what was a time that once you were in a leadership role, because you were saying, hey, you got to make these big decisions, you got to take action, you got to move. Can you pinpoint a time that you made that decision, it didn't work, you're getting ready to have to pivot, and what did you do about it, and then what did you learn from it?
So I don't know if this situation totally answers your question, but it is something I feel
Let's
is
dive
valuable.
in.
So we'll start where I'm going, and maybe we can wrap around.
Okay.
When I got hired, so work at the airport was rather difficult for the leadership team because there was no mutual respect. So when I started as an entry level supervisor, I had my manager and we worked the same shift. Well, this manager, in my opinion, had very little control over the team. So he was, you know, at giving verbal warnings to everybody, giving written warnings to everybody. And
Jeez.
he said, Mike, you need to talk to so and so, and they're on a written warning, and let them know they're going to be suspended next time. The decision I had to make for myself, but for my team, my new team, was I'm not at that level. If I come in today and I decide to do it exactly as what I would say, and you can't say this out loud, but my inexperienced boss wanted me to do, I would have had a horrible time. So the decision I made was to talk to him in a non-confrontational but firm way. And
Let me clarify. Talk to who?
yeah,
Your boss or
my
the
boss,
employee?
my direct boss, to say,
Okay.
listen, I understand that you're frustrated with this situation. I would like to come in on a clean slate with these people. Meaning, after our shift, I'll have a team meeting, make my expectations very clear. With a little negotiating, he said, that's fine, but every write up, every written warning, it all comes down on you now. And I said, no problem. So that was a decision. It was a tough decision because you're telling your boss, I'm not going to do it the way you want me to do it. But I had a justification. I was able to help him understand why I wanted to do it this way. Then it
Sure.
came. So the whole thing is at the airport, conveyor belts, they're dirty. So there's areas in the airport that we were responsible for cleaning. Nobody liked to do it. I didn't like to do it. It was just something that often got overlooked, but upper management was starting to crack down on. So it was very simple for me at that point. We have a team meeting, and I say, these are the expectations. We all know nobody likes it. I get it. I'm not telling you to pretend to like it. It's what has to happen. From there, I had a few employees come, or my direct supervisor telling me, you need to write these people up. I said, okay, let's just have one step before that. So I was able to call these employees into the office, have a one-on-one with them, share the expectations, make sure that they understood. And then it's as simple as treating them like adults. I'm going to say, John, it wasn't John, but John, here's the situation. You know, this has to be done. You know that I'm coming around to inspect it. I just want to be clear. This is our conversation. If I have to go and it's not done again, these are the next steps. At which point, I'm not going to be sitting and feeling bad for you. I'm not going to sit and feel awkward handing you a write-up, a written warning, a suspension. It's no longer on me.
Sure.
At that point, it was always done. I didn't have, or our crew didn't have any issue doing the cleaning. If somebody forgot before the end of the shift, they came to me and said, Mike, I'll clean that up tomorrow. I'm really sorry. That made life so easy. So that decision to talk to my boss in a manner to get them to understand I needed to try to do it a different way because theirs wasn't working
Sure.
really made a huge impact on the team and how they performed, not for me, but how they performed with me, how I was able to ask them to go above and beyond. And when I say, oh, guys, I mean, those guys and girls, but when I say, guys, we got some real crap happening right now, I need everybody, all hands on deck. Nobody hesitated. Nobody said, I'm on break, I'm not coming back. So it was such a huge learning opportunity for myself, but also for my colleagues who were having a hard time managing this group of people. It was the managers. It wasn't the group of people.
Sure. It's almost always, I think you bring up a good point there. It's almost always management. It's the quality of our communication. We think that what we are saying or presenting is clear, but the reality is clarity and communication comes through the person receiving it.
Yes.
Right. So if you know, you're saying, and one of the things that because I like breaking stuff like this down during the podcast, right? Like, okay, well, what are 3 steps to accountability? And I'm going to pull this out from what you just said, like 3 steps to accountability. First, you meet with everybody and you give what's the clear expectation, right? Then you get the agreement. I think that's something that's so powerful. And a lot of managers miss that. A lot of leaders miss that, is they say, well, I give them the expectation and I give them the consequence, but they miss that middle step of, well, yeah, you need to buy in. You got to manage by agreement. And so it's, okay, here's what we need done. Do you guys agree to do this? Do you understand my communication? Everybody says yes. And then the third piece of accountability is, what's the consequence?
Yep.
That's when the verbal warning comes in. That's when the write-up comes in. That's when the suspension comes in. These other pieces. So if you're breaking down, and if I were to ask you in the future, Mike, hey, what are the 3 steps to accountability? You'd say, right? And for anybody taking notes, write that down. What are 3 steps to being holding people accountable, right? You got to share what the expectation is, manage by agreement, share the consequence.
Yes. And what I would say is less experienced managers, or not even less experienced, those that don't know how to manage, they rely too heavily on the discipline. They rely on the stick. And I really don't think that's the best way to go. You have to have a stick available, but to lean on that you're not winning anybody over. You're not winning the day.
Well, we've all worked with managers like that. We've all worked with people like that.
Yep.
That the response, right. And I've had, my current leadership and management team has said this as a joke, and we all laugh because it is a joke, but there's some people that seriously will manage through, well, the beatings will continue till morale improves. And it's like, how does that work? Right?
You better figure it out.
I got it. Right. And like I said, we say that tongue in cheek, but you know as well as I do, there are people that think that is the process. Well, it's the stick, it's the stick, it's the stick. And eventually this will get fixed. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So let me flip to the other side, because we've talked a lot about, okay, here's the accountability. You said at the very beginning, hey, I'm a really direct leader. Like, I tell you what the expectation is. There's not a whole lot of fluff. I do know that about you. So what about the, I've said this before, because this is my thing. Like, what about the hugs and high fives? How do you recognize the achievements? Like, what are some ways that people in leadership roles can recognize the achievements of their team members when they're winning?
Yes. So one thing that, and it's not difficult, but it in my experience has had the most impact. It's not a show. It's not an announcement in front of everybody. It's not gifts. It's literally going up to the person and say, thanks for doing this because X, Y, and Z. People listen, I want more money just like the next guy. But to be acknowledged for a job well done speaks so much volume. Yes. The big thing on TikTok's also everybody getting ticked off because their boss is bringing a pizza party. Yeah, I like pizza like the next guy too. But you know what? I just want acknowledgement. I want somebody to say, good job. I saw that you went above and beyond. You weren't acting your wage. You really helped this customer with that. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. That is not said enough in my
Mhm.
experience. And it's one of the most simple things that you can do. Of course, big things happen, make the announcement in front of the team, you know, company email, whatever that might be.
Certificates.
Certificates, yes, gift cards, all that's great. But you can start with a handshake and a real, genuine thank you for X, Y, and Z.
I think that's really
It's
powerful.
free. It's freaking free,
Well,
Mike.
and here's the thing that's crazy is I do think a lot of people, because I've seen the pizza party stuff, like we overvalue the pizza and we undervalue the power of our words. Right?
Yes.
There's so much power in thank you, and there's so much power in I'm sorry when
Yep.
it's genuine.
Yep.
Those things, taking those two pieces of genuine communication to people
Yep.
it's one of the most powerful things you can do.
And it
And
has to be who you are. Like you have to genuinely believe this.
yes,
Thank you, this person. Because I had other supervisors try to follow my role, but they've built up years of experience telling people off, beating on them. And then they expect that everybody's going to be, oh, great. So and so said thank you. No, that's not how it
yeah.
works. Like your whole being just has to be a good person and know the value of a thank you.
Well, and so let's talk about that for a minute. In leadership, what maybe somebody's watching the show right now and they're saying, "Man, I screwed up." How can
Yep.
they fix it? Like, is it that because you just said like it's not an overnight fix? What are some steps? What are some things that they could do starting right now? How do you shift? Because people that are watching shows like this or listening to podcasts, I believe have a genuine desire to grow.
Yep.
And so, how can somebody grow past from where they're at? Like, hey, yeah, because I've been there. I have absolutely been there. I have one gal who's worked for me for about 10 years. And she said, she goes, man, you used to be so much rougher on us. And she said, like, and like you, my, I don't want to say facade, but my sugar coating of it was that, well, it's just that I'm being direct. And she's like, no, sometimes you were being a bitch. And
Mike.
well, but part of the reason I think one of the benefits, part of the reason she's worked with me for so long is because there is that genuine caring. So if somebody realizes, if they were to realize, hey man, I screwed up, what are some things, what are some steps they could take, like starting today to make a shift into
So first, it has to be the person realizing they've screwed up. I can't tell you, Mike, yeah, you're not managing right. You're a little bit rough. It's you have to say, maybe this is the thing. Of course, I can tell you, but you have to own it. You have to say, yeah,
sure,
I see myself making these errors or maybe not doing things correctly. But immediately I would start by putting my best foot forward, saying thank you, knowing it's probably just going to roll off people's back. It's empty words. You have to take that on the chin. That's your burden to carry for the time being. But I think
sure.
you could also take time and genuinely ask people what they think. It's going to hurt. Like if you're that guy that has been crapping on people, and you sit down and you bring coffee to them and you say, unload, let me know, it's gonna hurt. It's more than just tearing off a band-aid.
Let me jump in here for a second because I think one thing that you got to realize for me, my leadership growth journey, that's one of the things I remember asking people, "Hey, what am I doing here that's dumb?
Yep.
What am I doing right now that I've asked that direct
Well,
question
here,
and
stupid.
asked
Hold
that
on.
people. Well, but that's the thing.
Yep.
You go, "Oh, hey, what am I doing that doesn't work or what am I doing that's dumb?"
Yep.
And initially people are like,
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna
"Nothing,
tell
you're
you.
doing great."
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
They're like in their head they go, "It's a trap."
Yeah.
And so you got to understand the first 10 times you ask that,
Yep.
you know, if you have 10 employees, the first 10 times you ask it, even if it's in a group setting, they're going to be like, nah, everything's great. Right. And then when you leave the room, they're going to be like, do you believe he had the gall to ask that?
You
Like, he
think I
doesn't know.
knew? You ain't catching me like that.
Right. But you have to realize it does take time.
Yes.
It does take time and training. So I think what you're saying there is really valuable, because about the third, fourth, fifth time, maybe you're asking somebody, then they're like, well, maybe he's serious about this.
And you genuinely have to be humble. You have to come in and kind of, open up your heart, kind of, as cheesy as that just sounded coming out of my mouth, but you have to open yourself up and like you said, Mike, a couple of times, for people to buy into what you're selling.
Sure.
And you have to listen. Some things they're going to say, they might be personal, and it's gonna hurt, but take it and try to build the new you off of this information. So if people say that you're always yelling, try not to yell. It's not for you to sit down and, Mike tells me, oh, you're always talking so loud and it always seems like you're aggressive. It's not for me to turn around and say, well, Mike, that's how I talk. No, it's your turn to listen. I have to listen and make the adjustments. Some people are going to be okay. Some people are going to ask for different things, but just being humble enough to take it in, not justifying yourself, because that's not what it's about. It's about them and their thoughts, not you and your feelings.
Absolutely. There's a good comment here. Joseph Heafy says, hey, I grow from my mistakes. At the moment, it's horrible, but I learn from it and do better. You have to be humble and willing to learn and move on, which you just added there. I think that's absolutely spot on. And it is when we're growing, growth in anything is often painful. Yes. I think it's something that we look at it and we go, man, that is not what I expected.
Yes.
But know that there's an opportunity on the other side of that.
Yes, a huge opportunity. And you're more than likely, you're not going to see what doors this is going to open up for you. Even if it's just making everybody's day easier and nicer. That's a huge change in a work environment when people are spending 40 hours with you.
Absolutely. A lot of people are spending more time in their work environment. And you said this way earlier on, like, hey, you don't have to be a family, but you got to be connected with the team and so forth. Oftentimes you're spending as much or more time with your team sometimes than we are with our families.
Yes.
Like and why are you doing that? You're doing that to provide for your family. You're doing that so that you can get the win, your family can get the win. Well, do that for the other people that are on your team as well. Right.
So they can get the win, and then you get the win at work, because it's like just going to hang out. Yeah, we got things to do, but it's enjoyable.
Absolutely. So I'm going to remind everybody, if you guys want to connect with Mike, you can go to mikeashie.com. We're kind of coming down to the tail end here. So make sure and check out mikeashie.com. He does leadership consulting, leadership training, one-on-one coaching, and so forth. You've got a really good tight-knit leadership group. And then also Mike's channel, which has this is seriously, it's the best channel name in the world. I'm just staring in the camera.
I love it.
It's great. Man, he beat me to it, but like 6 months or something like that. So any final thoughts, Mike? Anything else to take us out? And any other ways people should connect with you?
Definitely the website, YouTube. There's over 400 videos on there. You're bound to learn something. But hit me up if you have any questions. Ultimately, in my experience, management can be a tough job. It can be a demanding job, but it doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to hurt your soul. You can have a good time. You can have connection with people and enjoy your job and make it so that they enjoy their jobs. And it's snowballs into everybody having as much of a good time at work as you can. If you don't get the training from your workplace, and most entry-level managers don't have the training. You're expected to be, since you're a good employee, you'll be good as a key holder, a frontline manager, whatever it is. That's usually not the case. Go online, go to Mike's channel, my channel. We got a group of leadership coaches, and educate yourself. Don't wait for somebody to come in and save you. Don't wait for a hero. You got to do it yourself. When you take that on and you just learn a little bit, you will be moving ahead in leaps and bounds. It's amazing when you start doing it. That's my rah.
No, I think you're spot on. Be your own hero.
Yeah.
I remember saying that some years ago, like, don't wait on somebody else for your own success.
Nobody's coming. And especially if you're an entry-level manager, nobody's training you.
Well, sometimes we're fortunate to have companies that offer training, but there's so many good resources out there too.
Yes.
So I think you're spot on. Thank you, Mike. Really bless you. And thank you for making the time and taking your time today and sharing with my audience here on the Leadership Toolkit. You're awesome. I appreciate you very much, man.
You're the best. I'll talk soon.
Talk soon. All right. And for everybody else, thank you very much for taking the time to tune in and join us today on the Leadership Toolkit. Make sure to like the episode, subscribe, share this. If you know somebody that would gain something out of this, if they're new to management, they may gain something out of this episode. If they've been in management for a long time and they need a gentle reminder, they may gain something out of this episode. Make sure that you share it with them. Subscribe to the channel. I would love to see you back here again. We do this every Wednesday at 12:05 Mountain, 2:05 Eastern time. I appreciate you very much. And until I see you next week, make sure that you pour everything into your people. Be great, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.